And when you're taking these notes, are they like physical pen and paper style notes, or like you said, you're typing right into a Google Doc, or?
Yeah, so I use my phone a lot. And it's easier when I'm reading an ebook or something, or even an audiobook. So I'll use my notes app on my phone, and so I won't dive too deep into my process here, but I basically to stop or to not interrupt the flow of my reading, I just mark the page of where I want, especially if it's a longer passage. Sometimes I copy out, like paragraphs of text, right? So I don't want to sit there texting a paragraph when I'm going to be reading. So I mark which page it's on and the first couple of words. And sometimes if I'm reading a physical book, I'll mark where it is on the page. So if it's at the very bottom, or it starts at one of the very last words on the page and it leads into the next page, I'll just write, page number, very last, and then the first couple of words that it starts with. And then when I go back to that physical book, I go to that page, go to that part of the page, and type it out in my notes on my computer, and then that is searchable.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you do a lot of, like you said, maybe ebook reading or audiobook reading, or like what's your favorite strategy? Like opening up a real book, or?
Yeah, tons. There's nothing. I mean, I'm sure you feel much the same way. I mean, there's nothing like holding a physical book. Like it's a special feeling.
Yeah, it is.
As convenient as ebooks are and audiobooks are, I'm not going to give those up anytime soon. But I have to touch a physical book at least once a day.
Okay.
I can't I can't not do that. But that being said, like sometimes, I'm reading Don Quixote. Right now it's like 900 pages, which is really funny. Really funny book, by the way. Like 400 years later, the jokes still stand up.
Man, that's
but
awesome.
it's a little heavy to be carrying around. So I'll have books on my phone. So I've got favorite book apps, like the ones that everybody uses, like iBooks. I have that. There's one called Scribd. They call it like Netflix for books. I think it's like $15 a month or something like that, or $12, and it'll suggest things to suggest books to you. And I found some favorite books on there. One was The Outsider by Colin Wilson, and I had no idea who this guy was, what the book was about, and it suggested that I read this book, and that's one of my new favorite books. So ebooks, man, I'm a convert. And then of course, like when there's I'm washing dishes or just on the treadmill at the gym, like lighter cardio, just audiobooks going.
Totally.
So you can turn your car into a classroom. I know that's like one of the self-improvement type phrases that people use. So it's totally true.
So yeah, it seems like the answer is all of the above, depending on the scenario. And
yeah, exactly.
Don't stop reading.
What I find convenient about ebooks is that you can more easily hold your coffee at the same time. So phone, coffee, usually how you'll find me.
Fair enough. Man, that's interesting. And like, is there ever a period of time where you're like, man, I want to reread this book? Like, do you do this ever?
I do, but not as often as I like. It's one of those things that I definitely see the value of. Absolutely. I mean, even like a book you've read 10 years ago, or like even a book you've read twice 10 years ago, you're 10 years older, you've read however many new books, you've had however many new experiences, you are a completely different person, and you will experience that same book in a totally different way. That being said, I get that. I don't reread a lot of books, and not because I don't see the value in it. It's just that I always feel like there's so many great books out there that I'm not reading. So it's like I always want to get to the next one.
Oh, fair enough.
So it's the eternal struggle, that tension between the new and the old,
Yeah, I totally see both sides. Like I've seen quotes like maybe on Instagram or just in general where this guy's like, I would rather read 10 books 100 times than 1,000 books once. And then I'm like, I don't know exactly where I stand, because like I see totally both sides, but I think I agree with your side more, which is like there's so much out there to learn. Let's just keep parsing through more and more, and let's keep the nuggets if possible on our way. But like, do you ever find it like, I don't know, how much room does a brain have for information? Like, do you ever feel like, man, as I'm reading this book, I'm going to be squeezing out some information in the back end? Or do you feel like Well, with the note taking, I bet it's easier to kind of keep it in your brain, and of course, you can always reference the docs. So, I guess the main question is like, how, like, do you feel like you're able to retain quite a bit of the information, or do you feel like you sometimes need a refresher quite often?
Yeah, I do. And I note on rereading books, one of an author I've read several books by, Ryan Holiday. He says that he's read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius more than 100 times, and I don't see that as like, I don't think that's crazy. I think that's perfectly reasonable. It's a great book. If there weren't 100 other books that I wanted to read, I could do that. But no, I agree. Yeah, you're definitely like, you're not going to retain everything. Just know that going in. I think it's best to externalize your memory as much as possible, and you don't have to remember facts and dates and things that you can just look up. It's
totally.
More ideas, things that are sort of more intangible, that are, you can't sort of, they're less concrete. Ideas, ways of seeing the world, sort of filters to look on reality, I guess, that you can't just look up on Wikipedia, and those are the things you have to really sort of remember, and that's where notes can help, just, sort of jot down your ideas. But actually, on that thought, I know for sure that, most people, like, are not using anything close to the full capacity of their mind.
Sure.
And like, I've gotten further in that respect than I used to be. Like, I use more of my, potential than I ever have before. Like, I push myself really hard, but most people just do not. Like, I don't think worrying about, like, you're being able to store more information is anything for people to worry about. You can always do more, and even better, like, we remember things by how they associate and attach to other things. And so if you can sort of associate one new thing that you're learning with something that you already know, that's going to be stickier in your mind too. So it's better to have this base of knowledge to work on, and it's stickier for when you come across new stuff. So
Fair enough. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like, I find myself, one of my favorite strategies is, like, as I'm reading, just take notes, and like what are like you were saying, it's like dates you can look up, but like, what are some things that I can, like, integrate into my life? Is that kind of how you sometimes take notes, where it's like, okay, what's something from this book that I can use right now, and I can use it tomorrow, and I can use it the next day, and it can, like, maybe add to my character as a man, or add to my character as a human? Like, I feel like that's, like, sometimes that's, like, I have a way smaller list of books that I've read. Like, a lot of them are audiobooks, but, like, there's, like, some where it's like, man, I can go back. Oh, I don't exactly know all the examples and the specific details, but it's like, I can just see the storyline as, like, as a way to, like, aim towards in my life. Like, oh, this character I want to be like because of this, or this story reminds me of the importance of that. And yeah, like, I'm totally with you. It's really cool.
Absolutely, and it's best if you can, like, apply something immediately, and that way it's going to be better retained, and especially if it's more nonfiction, or, like, business oriented, or, like, self improvement. Like, there are things, like, on every single page of some books that you can apply immediately, and even, like, one of the books I'm reading now, it's like a really sort of intense time management book. There's stuff that sometimes it doesn't make it into my notes. What I do is just immediately go to my organizational system and apply it there, and it's just like immediately use it. And
what's it called? What's the book called?
It's a book by Dan Kennedy. It's called No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs. It's his part of, like, a system, and he's a pretty intense dude. He only has a fax machine. Doesn't have email. Doesn't have phones. Yeah, doesn't have phone, doesn't have social media, doesn't have anything. What he does, like, clients have to, like, if clients want to meet with him in person, they have to fly him to them in a private plane, or else come to him. So it's like, I'll come to you, but you have to pay for this private flight, or you can just come to me. And they're
interesting.
Like, yeah, right. And they're like, well, I guess it would be easier for me to just fly to you. And he's like, perfect. It saves a whole bunch of time. So he's a little bit, extremely intense. But I'm learning a lot from that book. And there's a few things already. Well, many things that I may not enter them into my notes, but I'll immediately apply them.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's interesting. And like, do you find yourself listening to specific types of books during specific seasons, or during specific times of day? Like maybe at night you might listen to a fiction, whereas maybe in the day or going to the gym you're listening to a nonfiction, or like, do you try to like, using the time management systems you might be learning, like, do you try to like segment what type of books you're listening to or reading when?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think more people should read several books at once. I think that's an underutilized strategy. But
why do you think that? Just not to interrupt, but
I'm sorry.
Why do you think people should read multiple at once?
Well, it allows you to not be stuck on any one book. So sometimes like it's just the wrong time and place, like you said. There's certain books that like I'm just not in the mood for right now. Say I'm reading, like I just finished a poetry book by Charles Bukowski, one of my favorite poets. But I'm not always in the mood to read poetry. And if that was the only book that I was reading, there's a much higher likelihood of me saying, well, I don't want to read that right now, so I'm not going to read at all. Whereas if I have several books, and so at night it'll be more fiction. I'm reading a Haruki Murakami novel called The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle right now, and it's perfect for bedtime reading. So I wind down and turn off everything. I don't answer any messages, and I read, and it's perfect for winding down. But then in the morning, maybe I'm in the mood for like, all right, I'm gonna get after this day. I'm gonna like attack this time management book and see what I can use. So it's different things.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've seen myself. Go ahead.
We were talking about earlier, reading, like taking a book with you. If you're only reading one book, and it's a physical book, and it's just like it's huge or something, or just unwieldy, I guess, and you can't take it with you for some reason, but you can take your phone. If you're reading two books, one on your phone and one physical version, you can always read. And I think it's so underutilized as a strategy. You can just get so much more reading done that way.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I totally get what you mean. It's like, I'm just not in the mood for this specific book. It's kind of heavy. I just might not read
exactly.
Then. And it's like, that's a bit of a cop-out. You could be reading something else.
Right. Yeah. Well, I put it this way to people, like when you were in school, you didn't take like a month of math classes and then a month of English. You had, math class in the morning and then English class in the afternoon, so you can handle it. Like and again, like the capacity of your mind is greater than a lot of people give it credit for. And like you can handle additional demands.